The gunshot that shattered the midnight silence sent Grace Calloway running through the back alleys of San Antonio, with nothing but the blood-stained dress on her back and terror pounding through her veins. She had witnessed something she should not have seen, something that would get her killed if Marcus Delaney's men caught up with her. The gambling hall owner had murdered his business partner in cold blood, and Grace had been serving drinks in the back room when it happened. Their eyes had met across the body, and she had run. That was 3 days ago, and she had been running ever since, using every last cent she had saved from her work as a waitress to buy passage on coaches heading west, always looking over her shoulder, always expecting to see Delaney's hired guns. The Texas countryside rolled past the stage-coach window as Grace pressed herself into the corner, trying to make herself small and invisible. Her long auburn hair was tucked under a borrowed bonnet, and she had traded her distinctive green dress for a simple brown traveling outfit purchased from a widow in the last town. The other passengers paid her little attention, which was exactly what she wanted. She had no destination in mind, only the desperate need to put distance between herself and San Antonio, between herself and the memory of blood pooling on expensive carpet and the cold promise in Marcus Delaney's eyes. When the coach stopped in Old Tucson, Arizona Territory, in early March of 1876, Grace stepped down onto the dusty Main Street with no plan and less than $2 to her name. The desert sun beat down mercilessly, so different from the humid heat of San Antonio. Adobe buildings lined the wide street, and in the distance, mountains rose purple and imposing against the brilliant blue sky. She found a small boarding house run by a Mexican woman named Senora Martinez, who took pity on her exhausted appearance and offered her a room for $1 a week, with the understanding that Grace would help with the cooking and cleaning to make up the difference. It was not much, but it was shelter, and for the first night in days, Grace slept without fully dressed and ready to run. The next morning, Senora Martinez was full of local gossip over breakfast. There were 6 other boarders, mostly men working at the nearby silver mine, and they ate with the focused intensity of people who did hard physical labor. Grace kept her eyes down and her conversation minimal, still afraid of drawing attention. "You are looking for work, yes?" Senora Martinez asked as Grace helped clear the dishes. The older woman had kind eyes and flour permanently dusted into the creases of her brown hands. "Yes, madam. Anything honest. There is not much for young women here. The saloon is always looking for girls, but I do not think that is what you want." Senora Martinez gave her a knowing look. "You have the look of someone running from trouble." Grace felt her face flush. "I witnessed something I should not have. Bad men want to make sure I cannot talk about it." "Ah, then you need to disappear, yes. Become someone new." Senora Martinez wiped her hands on her apron thoughtfully. "Come with me." She led Grace to the small general store attached to the boarding house. Behind the counter, she pulled out a week-old newspaper and flipped to the back pages. "Look here. The advertisements. Many homesteaders out here need wives. It is business arrangement, you understand. You need protection, a new name, a place those bad men will never find you. These men need wives to prove up their claims. The government says they must improve the land, and a married man with family is more likely to keep his claim." Grace stared at the columns of advertisements. "Mail-order brides is not so romantic but is practical. You would be Senora someone else, protected by a husband, living on a homestead far from town. Those men looking for you would never think to look at marriage records in Arizona Territory." Senora Martinez tapped one advertisement with a flour-dusted finger. "This one is closest. Only 10 miles from town. Tyler Holloway, Homesteader. I know of him. He comes to town once a month for supplies. Quiet man, polite. Lost his family to fever back in Kansas, came west to start new. He has a good claim with water rights, but he needs a wife to keep it legal. The advertisement was simple and honest. Homesteader seeks wife. Must be of good character and willing to work hard. Marriage in name initially with hope of real partnership. Reply to Tyler Holloway, care of Old Tucson General Store. Grace's hands trembled as she held the newspaper. This was not how she had imagined her life turning out. She was 22 years old, and she had dreamed of romance, of falling in love, of a wedding surrounded by friends and family. But that girl with those dreams had died in a San Antonio gambling hall 3 nights ago. The woman she was now needed to survive, and if marriage to a stranger could give her that chance, she would take it. "How do I reply?" she asked quietly. Senora Martinez smiled. "I will send word to him when he comes to town. You can meet him properly before you decide anything final. But Mija, you should know something. Tyler Holloway is a good man, but he is lonely and sad. His wife and baby daughter died 5 years ago. He has not looked at a woman since. This marriage he seeks is for his land, not his heart. Do not expect love." "I am not looking for love," Grace said firmly. "I am looking to stay alive." That had been the truth when she said it. 3 days later, when Tyler Holloway rode into Old Tucson on a sturdy bay horse, Grace was still telling herself that survival was all that mattered. Senora Martinez introduced them in the small parlor of the boarding house. Tyler was tall, with broad shoulders built from hard work and hands calloused from labor. He was maybe 30 years old, with dark brown hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. He had the weathered look of a man who spent his life outdoors, and there was a stillness about him that spoke of deep loneliness. He was not handsome in the conventional sense, but there was something solid and real about him that made Grace feel, for the first time in days, like she might actually be safe. "Miss Calloway," he said, removing his hat. His voice was deep and quiet. "Senora Martinez said you might be interested in my proposal." "Yes, Mr. Holloway." She explained the situation. "Please call me Tyler. If we are going to be married, we should use given names." He turned his hat in his hands, clearly uncomfortable with the formality of the situation. "I should be honest with you about what I am offering. I have 160 acres 10 miles west of here. There is a creek that runs through the property year-round, and I have built a cabin, a barn, and I am working on irrigation ditches for crops. I have cattle, chickens, 2 horses, and I am planning to plant corn and beans this spring. It is a good piece of land, but the government says I need to prove I am settling it permanent, like building a real homestead. A married man with a family looks more serious about staying than a bachelor." Grace nodded, appreciating his directness. "Senora Martinez mentioned you lost your family." Something flickered in Tyler's eyes, pain quickly shuddered. "Yes, 5 years ago. Fever took my wife Sarah and our daughter Emma. She was only 2 years old." He cleared his throat. "I am not looking to replace them. I want to be clear about that. This would be a business arrangement. You would have your own room, your own space. I would expect help with the household work, cooking, maybe tending the garden and chickens. In return, you would have a home, protection, and my name. If over time we find we suit each other for a real marriage, we could discuss that. But there would be no pressure, no expectations beyond what we agree to now." It was the most practical, unromantic marriage proposal imaginable, and yet Grace found herself relieved by his honesty. "I need to be honest with you as well, Tyler. I am running from something. There are dangerous men looking for me in Texas. I witnessed a murder, and the man who did it wants to make sure I cannot testify against him. If I marry you and take your name, I would be harder to find. But I need you to know that there could be risk. Tyler studied her for a long moment. These men, are they likely to come this far? I do not know. I have been careful to cover my trail, but Marcus Delaney has money and connections. He might send people looking. Can you shoot a rifle? The question surprised her. I can learn. Then I will teach you, and I will make sure you know how to protect yourself if I am out working the far fields. Tyler met her eyes steadily. I am not afraid of trouble, Grace. I have faced down claim jumpers and dealt with cattle thieves. If these men come looking, they will find you are under my protection, and I take that serious. Something in Grace's chest loosened. Why would you take that risk for a stranger? Because I understand what it is like to need a fresh start. When Sarah and Emma died, I could not stay in Kansas. Everything reminded me of them. I came west to disappear and to work, to build something new. If you need the same thing, I can give you that chance. He paused. And truthfully, I need this too. The land office has been making noises about bachelors wasting good homestead claims. I have put 5 years of work into this land. I am not going to lose it because some bureaucrat does not think I am settled enough. Grace made her decision. When would we marry? Today, if you are willing. The circuit judge is in town until tomorrow morning. We could have a legal ceremony, file the papers, and I could bring you out to the homestead this afternoon. Tyler's expression was serious. I know this is fast. If you need more time to think about it, I understand. But time was something Grace did not have. Every day she stayed in town was another day for Delaney's men to catch up to her. Today is fine. The ceremony was brief and businesslike, conducted in the judge's office with Senora Martinez and the store clerk as witnesses. Grace wore a simple blue dress borrowed from the Senora, and Tyler wore his cleanest shirt and his only tie. The judge looked at them with some skepticism, clearly suspecting this was a marriage of convenience for the land claim. But he performed the ceremony according to law and filed the paperwork that made Grace Calloway into Grace Holloway. When Tyler slipped the simple gold band onto her finger, his hands were warm and steady. Grace looked up into his storm-cloud eyes and felt the strangest sensation, like she was standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. This man was her husband now, bound to her by law if not by love. She was safe now, or as safe as she could be. Grace Calloway, the witness to murder, had disappeared. Grace Holloway, the homesteader's wife, had taken her place. Tyler had brought a small wagon to town to carry supplies back to the homestead. He helped Grace load her few possessions, then assisted her onto the wagon seat with quiet courtesy. As they rolled out of Old Tucson, heading west into the desert scrubland, Grace felt like she was leaving her old life behind with every turn of the wheels. "Tell me about the homestead," she said, wanting to fill the awkward silence. Tyler seemed to relax slightly as he talked about his land. "The cabin is not big, but it is solid. 2 rooms right now, but I have been planning to add on. There is a good well in addition to the creek, so we never lack for water. I have got 30 head of cattle, a dozen chickens, and I am thinking about getting some pigs. The soil is good along the creek bottom, and I have been working on irrigation channels to bring water to the higher fields." "It sounds like you have worked hard." "It is all I have done for 5 years," Tyler said quietly. "Work until I am too tired to think, then sleep and start again. The land does not judge you and it does not ask questions. You put in honest labor and it gives you something back." Grace understood that kind of escape into work. "I will help however I can. I am good with chickens and gardens. I can cook and clean. I can learn anything else you need." "I am sure you will do fine." Tyler glanced at her. "This is going to be strange for both of us. We are married, but we are strangers. I think we should be patient with each other, give ourselves time to figure out how this works." I appreciate that. The homestead appeared as they crested a rise, and Grace caught her breath. The cabin sat in a small valley with the creek running silver through the center. Cottonwood trees grew along the water, their new spring leaves bright green against the desert browns and golds. The cabin was larger than she expected, built of logs chinked with mud, with a real glass window and a porch across the front. The barn stood nearby, sturdy and well-maintained, and she could see cattle grazing on the hillside beyond. It was isolated and remote, exactly what she needed, but it was also beautiful in its own stark way. "It is lovely," she said honestly. Tyler looked pleased. "I will show you around." He helped her down from the wagon, and Grace felt the awkwardness of their situation settle over them again. They were married, but they barely knew each other. Tyler seemed to feel it too because he kept a careful distance as he showed her the property. The cabin interior was clean but sparse. The main room had a fireplace, a table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair, and shelves with supplies. A ladder led to a sleeping loft. Through a doorway was a smaller room with a bed, a trunk, and little else. "This was going to be Emma's room when she got bigger," Tyler said quietly, standing in the doorway. "I have been using it for storage, but I cleared it out yesterday. You can have this room. I will sleep in the loft. There is privacy for both of us." Grace looked at the simple room and felt an unexpected wave of emotion. This man had lost his daughter 5 years ago and kept her room waiting, and now he was giving it to a stranger to honor his promise of separate spaces. "Thank you, Tyler, for all of this, for giving me a chance." "We are giving each other a chance," he corrected gently. "Now let me show you where everything is, and then I need to get back to work. I have irrigation ditches that will not dig themselves." Over the following days, they developed a cautious routine. Tyler rose before dawn and worked until dark, coming in only for the meals Grace prepared. She threw herself into making the cabin into a real home, scrubbing floors, washing windows, organizing supplies. She learned to milk the cow Tyler had not mentioned, figured out which chickens were the best layers, and started a garden plot near the creek where the soil was rich and dark. They spoke little at first, their conversations limited to practical matters. Where did he keep the extra flour? Which fields was he working that day? But gradually, as days turned into a week and then 2, they began to talk about other things. Tyler told her about Kansas, about growing up on his parents' farm, about meeting Sarah at a church social when they were both 18. He spoke about her with love, but without the raw pain Grace had expected, as if 5 years had given him enough distance to remember without bleeding. Grace told him about her own past, carefully editing the most recent events. She talked about growing up in San Antonio, about her mother who had died when she was 16 and her father who drank himself to death a year later. She talked about working as a waitress, about the loneliness of being young and alone in a city that did not care if you lived or died. She told him about witnessing the murder, about running, about the fear that had driven her west. "You think they are still looking?" Tyler asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of orange and gold. "I do not know," Grace admitted. "Marcus Delaney is the type of man who does not like loose ends, but I also think he would not want to draw attention by chasing me across territories. He is powerful in San Antonio, but out here he is just another name. If anyone comes asking about you in town, Senora Martinez will get word to me," Tyler said. "And out here you can see someone coming from a long way off. We will be ready." Though we made Grace feel warm despite the cooling evening air, she was not alone anymore. As March gave way to April, the desert bloomed in unexpected ways. Wildflowers appeared overnight, painting the scrubland in yellows, purples, and reds. Grace had never seen anything like it, and she walked among the flowers in wonder, gathering bouquets to brighten the cabin. Tyler watched her from where he was working on fence posts, a small smile on his weathered face. It was the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his features, making him look younger and less burdened. That evening, he surprised her by producing a pair of boots from town. "I noticed your shoes are not made for desert walking. These should fit better and protect you from snakes and thorns." Grace accepted the boots with surprise and pleasure. "You did not have to do that. You are my wife," Tyler said simply. "It is my job to provide for you." "This is more than just providing," Grace said softly. "This is kindness." Tyler looked uncomfortable with the praise, but pleased. "You have been working hard making this place into a home. It is the least I could do." Later that night, lying in her small room, Grace found herself thinking about her husband in new ways. He was a good man, honest and hardworking and unexpectedly thoughtful. When he looked at her, she did not see the calculations she had grown used to from men in San Antonio. He looked at her like she was a person, not just a pretty face or a useful set of hands. It had been so long since anyone had looked at her that way. She was starting to care for him, she realized with some surprise. Not love, not yet, but something warm and real that could grow into love if she let it. The question was, did Tyler feel the same? Or was he still so wrapped up in grief for his lost family that he could never open his heart again? The answer came unexpectedly a few days later. Grace was working in the garden when she heard horses approaching. Her heart seized with fear, and she ran toward the cabin, calling for Tyler. He emerged from the barn, rifle already in hand, his face grim. "Get inside," he ordered, and Grace obeyed, watching from the window as 3 men rode up to the cabin. They were not Delaney's men, she saw with relief. These were locals, rough-looking cowboys with sun-damaged skin and hard eyes. The leader was a barrel-chested man with a scar across his cheek. "You Holloway," the man called out. "I am. What can I do for you?" Tyler held the rifle casually, not quite pointed at them but ready. "Name's Jennings. I run cattle on the range east of here. Some of my steers have wandered onto your property and I have come to collect them." "You are welcome to any strays," Tyler said evenly. "But the 30 head in my pasture all wear my brand." Jennings's face darkened. "I think you have been rebranding my cattle, Holloway. I think you are a thief." "I think you are mistaken," Tyler said, his voice cold now. "Every animal on my land was bought legal and branded with my registered mark. You can check with the stock association in town if you doubt me." "Maybe I do not feel like riding all the way to town." Jennings shifted in his saddle. "Maybe I just take what is mine." "If you try to take my cattle, I will defend my property." Tyler raised the rifle slightly. "And I am a very good shot." The tension stretched tight as a wire. Grace held her breath, her hands clenched together. Then one of Jennings's men leaned over and said something quiet, and Jennings scowled. "We will check in town," he said finally. "But if I find out you are running a crooked operation, I will be back." "You do that," Tyler said. The men wheeled their horses and rode off at a gallop, leaving dust hanging in the air. Tyler stood watching until they disappeared, then lowered the rifle and let out a long breath. Grace rushed out. "Are you all right?" "I am fine. That was Jennings trying to intimidate me off my land. He has been after my water rights since I filed my claim." Tyler looked at her and something shifted in his expression. "You were worried about me." "Of course I was worried. Those men looked dangerous." "I have dealt with worse," Tyler said, but his voice was softer. "Thank you for caring." Their eyes met and held, and Grace felt something electric pass between them. Tyler reached out and gently touched her cheek, his calloused hand surprisingly tender. "Grace, I know this started as a business arrangement, but I find myself caring about what happens to you. Not just because you are my wife on paper, but because you are you." Grace's heart was pounding. "I care about you too, Tyler, more than I expected to." "I have been thinking," Tyler said slowly, as if feeling his way through unfamiliar territory. "Maybe we could try to make this a real marriage. Not rush anything, but see if what we have could grow into something more." "I would like that," Grace whispered. Tyler smiled, that rare, transforming smile, and leaned down to kiss her gently. It was a sweet, careful kiss, full of promise and hope. When they parted, Grace felt like she was glowing from the inside. "I have not kissed anyone since Sarah," Tyler admitted, his forehead resting against hers. "I thought I never would again, but you make me want to try living again, not just surviving." "You make me feel safe," Grace said. "And you make me feel seen. I have been invisible for so long, just another poor girl trying to get by, but when you look at me, I feel like I matter." "You do matter," Tyler said firmly. "You matter to me." They stood together on the porch as the sun set, Tyler's arm around Grace's shoulders and her head resting against his chest. For the first time since fleeing San Antonio, Grace felt something other than fear. She felt hope. Over the next weeks, their relationship deepened in small, precious ways. Tyler began staying up later in the evenings, sitting with Grace on the porch or by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his dreams for the homestead, about wanting to build a real ranch, maybe raise horses in addition to cattle. Grace shared her own tentative hopes, about maybe having a family someday, about building a life that was hers and not just a reaction to fear. They held hands while they talked, and Tyler kissed her goodnight with increasing warmth. But he never pushed for more, never tried to claim his marital rights. He was waiting, Grace realized, for her to be ready. Waiting for her to choose him, not just accept him as the lesser of bad options. It made her love him more. Love. The word surprised her when it floated through her mind one morning in late April as she watched Tyler work with one of the horses. She loved him. Somehow, in the space of 6 weeks, this quiet, damaged man had found his way into her heart. He was kind and strong and honest. He worked hard and kept his promises. He had given her safety and space and the freedom to heal from her fears. And now she wanted to give him something back, wanted to heal the loneliness that still lingered in his eyes. That evening, as they sat together after supper, Grace gathered her courage. "Tyler, I have been thinking about what you said about making this a real marriage." Tyler looked at her, hope and caution warring in his expression. "Yes, I want that too, not someday, but now. I want to be your wife in every way." She took his hand. "I love you, Tyler. I did not think I could feel this way so quickly, but I do." Tyler's face went through a series of emotions, ending on joy so pure it made Grace's throat tight. "I love you too, Grace. I have been falling in love with you since that first day, when you looked at my land like it was beautiful instead of just dirt and rocks. You brought light back into my life." He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, and Grace melted into his embrace. When he picked her up and carried her to his sleeping loft, she went willingly, eagerly, ready to truly become his wife. Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, a claiming and a gift all at once. Tyler touched her like she was precious, like she was the answer to prayers he had stopped saying. Grace gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back, and in the joining of their bodies, she felt the last walls around her heart crumble. She was his, and he was hers, and nothing else mattered. Afterward, lying tangled together in the narrow loft bed, Tyler held her close and whispered, "Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for giving me a reason to stop running," Grace whispered back. They fell asleep wrapped in each other, and for the first time in longer than Grace could remember, she had no nightmares. The next morning, Tyler was up before dawn as always, but he woke Grace with gentle kisses before climbing down the ladder. "I have work to do, but I will be back for lunch. Do not work too hard in the garden." "I will not if you will not," Grace teased, and Tyler laughed, a sound she was hearing more and more often. The day was warm and beautiful, and Grace sang while she worked, gathering eggs and tending her growing vegetables. She was happy, she realized. Truly, deeply happy in a way she had never been before. The terror of San Antonio seemed like a lifetime ago, a nightmare that had happened to someone else. She was Grace Holloway now, wife of Tyler Holloway, Homesteader. She had a home and a husband who loved her. The future stretched before her full of possibility instead of fear. She was so lost in happy thoughts that she did not notice the rider approaching until he was almost at the cabin. Grace looked up and froze. The man was a stranger, well-dressed in expensive riding clothes, with a hard face and calculating eyes. He sat his horse like someone used to being obeyed, and when he saw Grace, his expression shifted into something that made her skin crawl. "Well now," he said, dismounting smoothly. "I have been looking for a Grace Calloway. You would not happen to know where I might find her, would you?" Grace's heart hammered against her ribs. She forced herself to stay calm. "I am Grace Holloway. I do not know anyone named Calloway." "Interesting. Because you look exactly like the description I was given. Auburn hair, green eyes, about this tall." He stepped closer, and Grace backed toward the cabin. "Marcus Delaney sends his regards. He is very disappointed that you left San Antonio without saying goodbye." "I do not know what you are talking about," Grace said, her hand finding the rifle Tyler always kept by the door. "You are on private property. You should leave." The man laughed. "Brave words for a woman alone. Where is this husband I heard about? Out working, I suppose." "That gives us time to talk." He reached for her, and Grace brought the rifle up. "Do not touch me. I will shoot you." "Will you now?" The man seemed amused rather than frightened. "Delaney said you were a waitress, not a gunfighter. I do not think you have ever fired a gun in your life." He was right, and they both knew it. Grace's hands were shaking, and she had no idea if the rifle was even loaded. But she held it steady and said, "Maybe I have not, but my husband has taught me well, and at this distance, even I cannot miss." "Lower the gun, Grace. Make this easy on yourself. Delaney just wants you to come back and have a conversation. Answer a few questions. Maybe you misunderstood what you saw that night." "I saw him murder his partner. There is no misunderstanding that." The man's expression hardened. "Then you are going to have to come with me and explain that to Mr. Delaney personally. He is paying me a lot of money to bring you back." "She is not going anywhere with you." Tyler's voice came from behind the man, cold and deadly. The stranger spun around to find Tyler standing 10 feet away, his own rifle pointed rock steady at the man's chest. "This does not concern you," the stranger said. "Everything about my wife concerns me," Tyler said. "You are going to get on your horse and ride away. If you come back, I will shoot you on sight for trespassing. Delaney will send others. He has a long reach." "He has no reach here. This is Arizona territory, not Texas, and Grace is under my protection now. You go back and tell Marcus Delaney that if he sends anyone else after my wife, I will contact the territorial marshal and file a complaint about harassment. Then I will make sure every newspaper between here and San Antonio knows that he is so afraid of one woman's testimony that he is chasing her across territories. I do not think a man like Delaney wants that kind of attention on his business dealings." The stranger studied Tyler for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he shrugged. "Fine, I will give Delaney your message, but do not think this is over." "It is over," Tyler said flatly. "Grace Calloway died the night she left San Antonio." Only Grace Holloway exists now, and she is not afraid of you or your employer. Now get off my land." The man mounted his horse, gave Grace one last threatening look, and rode away at a gallop. As soon as he was out of sight, Grace's knees gave out. Tyler dropped his rifle and caught her, holding her as she shook. "It is all right, you are safe, I am here." "He found me," Grace gasped. "I thought I was safe, but he found me." "And I sent him away," Tyler said firmly, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. "Listen to me, Grace, you are my wife. You are under my protection. I meant every word I said to that man. If Delaney tries again, I will make so much noise about it that he will wish he had left you alone. Men like him operate in shadows. They hate having light shone on their activities. What if he sends more men? What if they hurt you to get to me? Then we will deal with it together," Tyler said. "I am not going to let anyone take you from me, Grace. You are mine now, and I protect what is mine." Despite her fear, Grace felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. She was his, and he would fight for her. After years of being alone and vulnerable, she had someone who would stand between her and danger. Tyler helped her into the cabin and made her sit, while he checked that all the windows and doors were secure. Then he sat beside her and took her hands. "I need to go into town and talk to the marshal. We need to make this official, get the law on our side. Will you be all right here for a few hours? Can I come with you?" Grace did not want to be alone. "Of course. We will go together." Tyler squeezed her hands. "I am sorry I was not here when he arrived. I should have been closer to the cabin. You could not have known, and I handled it until you arrived." Grace managed a shaky smile. "I threatened to shoot him." Tyler smiled back. "You were very brave. But I think we need to actually teach you to shoot, just in case. A threat is only good if you can back it up." That afternoon, they rode into Old Tucson together, and Tyler spoke with Marshal Garrett, a grizzled lawman who had been keeping the peace for 20 years. Tyler explained the situation, leaving out nothing, and the marshal listened with sharp attention. "Delaney," he said when Tyler finished. "I have heard that name. He runs high-stakes gambling in San Antonio, has connections to some bad people. If he is sending bounty hunters after your wife, he is serious." "Can you do anything?" Grace asked. "I can make sure every lawman in the territory knows that Grace Holloway is under protective watch, and that anyone trying to abduct or harm her will be arrested. I can also send a telegram to the Texas Rangers and let them know that Marcus Delaney is engaging in interstate harassment. They might want to look into his other activities while they are at it." Marshal Garrett gave Grace a kind look. "You testified to what you saw, madam." "Not officially. I ran before I could. Would you be willing to make a statement now? I can send it to the authorities in San Antonio. It might not hold up in court without you there in person, but it will put them on notice that someone is watching Delaney." Grace looked at Tyler, who nodded encouragingly. She took a deep breath and said, "Yes, I will make a statement." It took 2 hours to write down everything Grace had seen and heard the night of the murder. By the time she signed the document, her hand was cramping and she felt drained. But she also felt lighter, like she had set down a burden she had been carrying too long. "You did good," Tyler said as they rode back to the homestead in the gathering dusk. "That took courage." "I am tired of running," Grace said. "I want to live my life with you, not constantly looking over my shoulder." "Then that is what we will do," Tyler promised. Over the next weeks, they heard nothing from Delaney or his men. Marshal Garrett sent word that he had received a response from the Texas Rangers, who were now investigating Marcus Delaney for multiple charges including murder, fraud, and racketeering. It seemed Grace's statement had opened a door into his activities that law enforcement had been trying to access for years. Delaney was now too busy fighting legal troubles to send men after one escaped witness. "You are free," Tyler told Grace when the news came. "He cannot touch you now." Grace cried with relief, and Tyler held her while she let out all the fear she had been holding since that terrible night in San Antonio. When the tears finally stopped, she felt cleansed, ready to truly embrace her new life. Spring turned into summer, and the homestead flourished. Tyler's crops grew tall and healthy, the cattle multiplied, and Grace's garden produced enough vegetables to feed them and sell the surplus in town. They worked side by side in the fields and fell into bed exhausted and happy each night, making love with increasing passion and comfort. In early July, Grace realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another week to be sure, then another, and then she told Tyler over breakfast one morning, her heart in her throat, "I think I am with child." Tyler's fork clattered to his plate. He stared at her, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and then pure joy. "Truly, I think so. All the signs are there." Tyler was around the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms and spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "We are going to have a baby. Grace, we are going to have a family." "Are you happy?" Grace asked, even though she could see the answer written all over his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Tyler said, kissing her thoroughly. "I thought I would never have this again, never have a family, and now you have given me everything." "We are giving this to each other," Grace corrected, her hands on his shoulders. "I love you, Tyler." "I love you too," he said, and kissed her again. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though the summer heat was oppressive. Tyler was attentive and protective, constantly worrying that Grace was working too hard or not resting enough. She tolerated his hovering with amused patience, knowing it came from love and old grief. He had lost a wife and child before. He was terrified of losing her and this baby. "I am healthy," she reassured him constantly. "The midwife in town says everything is progressing perfectly. Stop worrying so much." "I will stop worrying when you and the baby are both here and safe," Tyler said firmly. In late August, news came that Marcus Delaney had been arrested and charged with murder, among other crimes. His gambling empire had collapsed, and he was facing life in prison if convicted. Grace felt the last shadow over her life lift. She was truly free now, free to be Grace Holloway without fear or reservation. That night, she and Tyler celebrated by sitting on the porch watching the stars come out, his hand resting gently on her growing belly. "Feel that?" Grace said, guiding his hand to where the baby was moving. "That is your son or daughter saying hello." Tyler's face was full of wonder. "I can feel it. That is our child, Grace. Our family." "Our family," Grace agreed, leaning into his embrace. Autumn came, painting the cottonwoods gold and bringing blessed cool air. Grace grew larger and slower, and Tyler took over more of her chores despite her protests. He hired a young man from town to help with the harvest so he could stay closer to the cabin, just in case. In late October, on a crisp morning when the desert was washed clean by overnight rain, Grace's pains began. Tyler rode for the midwife while Senora Martinez stayed with Grace, talking to her calmly and helping her through the contractions. The labor was long but not complicated. As the sun set, painting the world in gold and orange light, Grace gave birth to a healthy baby boy with Tyler's dark hair and her green eyes. When the midwife placed the baby in her arms, Grace looked down at his tiny, perfect face and felt her heart expand so much she thought it might burst. "He is beautiful," she whispered. Tyler was crying as he looked at his son, tears streaming down his weathered face. "He is perfect. You are amazing. I love you so much, Grace." "I love you too," she said, reaching for his hand. "We have a family now, Tyler. We have everything." They named him James, after Tyler's father, and he was a healthy, happy baby who rarely cried and seemed content to watch the world with curious eyes. Tyler was a devoted father, helping with night feedings and diaper changes despite Grace's insistence that he needed his sleep for work. He would stand by the cradle Tyler had built and just watch James sleep, his face full of awe and fierce protectiveness. "I was so afraid I would never have this again," he admitted one night as they lay in bed with James asleep between them. "After Sarah and Emma died, I thought that part of my life was over. But you gave it back to me, Grace. You gave me hope and love, and now this beautiful boy. I do not have words for how grateful I am." "You saved my life," Grace said softly. "When I came to Old Tucson, I was running and scared and alone. You gave me safety and a home and a chance to heal. You loved me when I did not think I was worthy of love. We saved each other, Tyler." "We did," he agreed, kissing her gently. "And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how loved you are." Winter came and went, and spring returned to paint the desert in wildflowers. James grew from an infant into a chubby, laughing baby who adored his father and reached for Tyler whenever he came in from the fields. Grace watched them together and felt such happiness she sometimes had to stop and just breathe through it. This was her life now. Not the frightened girl running from San Antonio, but a woman with a husband who loved her and a son who was the light of both their lives. She had a home and a future, and everything she had never dared to dream she could have. In early summer, Tyler rode into town and came back with lumber and plans. "What is all this?" Grace asked, watching him unload the wagon. "I am adding onto the cabin," Tyler said, grinning. "We need more room. A proper bedroom for us, a nursery for James, and maybe a room for future children if we are blessed with more." Grace felt warmth bloom in her chest. "Future children. Are you already planning to expand our family?" "Only if you want to," Tyler said quickly. "But yes, I would love to have more children with you. This house should be full of life and laughter." "I would like that too," Grace said, kissing him. "I would like a big family." By autumn, the addition was complete. The cabin now had 3 proper bedrooms, a larger main room, and a real kitchen with a proper stove Tyler had ordered from Tucson. It was a real home now, solid and permanent, a testament to everything they had built together. On their second anniversary, Tyler surprised Grace with a gift. He led her outside to where a sign hung over the porch, freshly painted and beautiful. "Holloway Ranch," Grace read, her voice catching. "Tyler, it is perfect." "We are not just a homestead anymore," Tyler said. "We are a ranch, a real working ranch, and it is ours, Grace. Yours and mine and James's. Our legacy." That night, after James was asleep in his new nursery, Tyler made love to Grace with the tenderness and passion that had only deepened over their 2 years together. As she lay in his arms afterward, she thought about how far she had come from that terrified woman fleeing San Antonio. She had found her home, her love, her purpose. She was Grace Holloway, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. The years flowed by like water, each one bringing new blessings. When James was 2, Grace gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Emma, after Tyler's first wife and daughter. Tyler cried when Grace suggested the name, and she knew she had honored his past while celebrating their future. Sarah was followed 2 years later by another boy, Thomas, and then 3 years after that by a second daughter, Rose. The cabin rang with children's laughter and the chaos of a busy household. Tyler expanded the barn and added more cattle and horses. The ranch prospered, becoming known throughout the territory for its quality livestock and honest dealings. Grace became a respected figure in Old Tucson, known for her kindness and her willingness to help neighbors in need. She had long since stopped looking over her shoulder for threats from her past. Marcus Delaney had been convicted and died in prison, and Grace Calloway was truly nothing more than a memory. On their 10th anniversary, Tyler and Grace stood on the porch of their ranch watching their 4 children play in the yard. James was 12 now, tall and serious like his father. Sarah was 8, a bright, curious girl who loved helping her mother in the garden. Thomas was 6 and already showing signs of being a natural horseman. Baby Rose was 3, a charming imp who wrapped her father around her little finger. 10 years, Tyler said, his arm around Grace's waist. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I met a scared young woman in Senora Martinez's parlor. Other times it feels like we have been together forever. We have been through so much, Grace said, leaning into his solid warmth. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat. I love you, Grace Holloway. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you too, Tyler. You are my home, my heart, my everything. They stood together watching their children, and Grace felt deep contentment settle over her. This was not the life she had imagined when she was young, but it was so much better than anything she could have dreamed. She had a husband who loved her, children who were healthy and happy, and a home that was truly hers. She had needed to escape her past, and Tyler had needed a wife to keep his claim. What they had found was so much more. They had found love, partnership, and a future bright with promise. As the sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Grace took Tyler's hand and squeezed it gently. He squeezed back, a silent conversation that needed no words. They had built this life together, and they would continue building it for all the years to come. Their love story had started with necessity and fear, but it had blossomed into something beautiful and lasting. Grace had been a lonely woman running from danger, and Tyler had been a lonely man trying to save his land. Together, they had saved each other and created a legacy that would outlast them both. The Holloway Ranch would stand as a testament to what 2 people could build when they chose to trust, to hope, and to love. And as their children grew and eventually had children of their own, the story would be told of how Grace and Tyler had found each other when they needed it most and built a family from courage, determination, and a love that conquered all obstacles. As darkness fell and Tyler called the children inside for supper, Grace took one last look at the land stretching out before her. This was home. This was love. This was everything she had ever needed, and it was hers now and forever. The years continued to pass in the gentle rhythm of ranch life. James grew into a young man, tall and capable, with his father's steady nature and his mother's quick mind. At 19, he took over more of the ranch responsibilities, allowing Tyler to slow down a bit, though Tyler claimed he was nowhere near ready to retire. Sarah married a kind young rancher from a neighboring property when she was 21, and Grace cried happy tears at the wedding held in the yard of the Holloway Ranch. Tyler walked his daughter down the makeshift aisle with pride shining in his eyes, and later he and Grace danced together under the stars, remembering their own wedding so many years ago. Thomas showed a talent for horse training and began building a reputation throughout the territory for his ability to gentle even the wildest mustangs. He was 17 now, full of energy and dreams, and Grace saw so much of Tyler's younger self in him. Rose, their baby, turned out to have a gift for drawing and painting. At 15, she filled sketchbooks with images of ranch life, capturing the beauty of the desert and the people she loved with surprising skill. Tyler built her a small studio in the barn where she could work on her art. Grace herself had grown into the role of ranch matriarch with grace and strength. She was 40 now, with threads of silver in her auburn hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She had never been happier. The girl who had fled San Antonio in terror was a distant memory. The woman she had become was confident, loved, and surrounded by family. On a warm evening in late spring, Grace and Tyler sat together on the porch swing he had built for her 40th birthday. The children were scattered, doing their various evening chores, and the ranch was peaceful in the golden light. "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Grace asked, her head resting on Tyler's shoulder. "Sometimes," Tyler admitted. "If you had not seen that advertisement, if you had chosen a different town to run to, if I had not needed a wife for my claim, so many things could have gone differently." "But they did not," Grace said. "We found each other exactly when we needed to." "Fate," Tyler said. "Or providence. Or just dumb luck. Whatever it was, I am grateful for it every single day." "Me too," Grace said softly. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. After all these years, they still fit together perfectly, still found peace in each other's presence. Their love had weathered every storm and only grown stronger with time. "I am proud of what we have built," Tyler said eventually. "This ranch, our children, our life together. We took broken pieces and made something whole and beautiful." "We did," Grace agreed, "and it will continue after us. James and his children, Sarah and her family, Thomas and whoever he chooses, Rose and her future. We have created a legacy, Tyler." "Our greatest achievement," Tyler said, kissing the top of her head. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, their children slowly gathered on the porch. It had become a tradition, this evening gathering where they would talk about the day and make plans for tomorrow. James reported on the new calves in the south pasture. Thomas talked about a particularly difficult horse he was working with. Rose showed them her latest sketches. Even Sarah, who now lived on her own ranch, had ridden over for supper and shared news of her first pregnancy. Grace and Tyler exchanged a look of pure joy. A grandchild, their first grandchild, was on the way. Their family was growing, their legacy continuing. Later that night, as Grace and Tyler prepared for bed, Tyler pulled her into his arms and held her close. "Thank you for 18 years of happiness. Thank you for our children, our home, our life. Thank you for being brave enough to answer that advertisement and take a chance on a lonely homesteader. Thank you for seeing past my fear and my past," Grace said. "Thank you for loving me, protecting me, building this life with me. You are the best man I have ever known, Tyler Holloway, and I am so grateful you are mine." They made love that night with the deep comfort and passion of two people who knew each other completely, who had weathered everything life could throw at them and emerged stronger. As Grace fell asleep in Tyler's arms, she felt the same peace she had felt every night for 18 years. She was home. She was loved. She was exactly where she was meant to be. 18 years ago, a terrified woman had fled into the night, running from death and danger. That same woman had found sanctuary in the arms of a grieving widower who needed her as much as she needed him. Together, they had built a love that transcended their original bargain, a family that filled their home with joy, and a legacy that would endure for generations. Grace Holloway had escaped her past and found her future. Tyler Holloway had needed a wife to keep his claim and found the love of his life instead. Their story was one of courage, hope, and the transformative power of love. And as the years continued to unfold, as their grandchildren played in the same yard where their children had played, as the Holloway Ranch grew and prospered, that love remained the foundation of everything. It was the promise two strangers had made to each other in a moment of desperate need, a promise that had become the greatest blessing either of them had ever known. On quiet evenings, Tyler and Grace would sit on their porch and watch the sunset, their hands intertwined. their hearts at peace. They had come so far from that awkward first meeting, had overcome so much, had built something beautiful from fear and necessity. They had found their happily ever after in the wild, beautiful landscape of Arizona territory, and neither of them would change a single moment of the journey that had brought them there. The Holloway Ranch stood strong and proud under the desert sun, a testament to the power of second chances, the strength of commitment, and the enduring nature of true love. And at its heart were Tyler and Grace, two souls who had found each other when they needed it most, and created a love story that would be remembered long after they were gone. Their children would tell the story to their grandchildren, who would tell it to their children in turn. The story of how a lonely homesteader needed a wife to keep his claim, and a frightened woman needed escape from her past, and how together they found something neither had been looking for but both desperately needed. They found love. They found home. They found each other. And that made all the difference.